Welcome everyone to this week's Mortgage News Live, and I'm delighted to be joined by a guest I'll introduce in just a moment. My name is Matt Guarente, and I'm going to be moderating for the next 45 minutes or so. We're going to focus this week on foreign nationals, on what the opportunity set might be, how we can help them perhaps get mortgages, what changes have happened over the past few weeks in terms of how we might address the opportunity and some of the challenges too. So we're joined by Matthew Surridge, who's Sales Director at MPowered Mortgages. We have Maira Oliveira of Mortgage Mum, and Ken James of Contractor Mortgages. So welcome to you all. I should also mention, actually, before we get on, that we're going to thank our sponsors, who are MPowered Mortgages, the Intermediary and the Newspage. So those are the the official bits done and out of the way, and we can kick on and start with our discussion. So thanks all of you for joining. Thanks for taking the time today. I guess I want to start just by thinking about what is the opportunity. You know, what is the size of the potential market here, and what basically are the differences between trying to help a borrower who is a UK national versus someone who has maybe lived here for a few years but is a foreign national and now decides they want to either buy a property for themselves or buy as an investment. Matthew, is that a place where we should start with you, and maybe you can do a quick intro for yourself too as we come to you as the first person in the discussion.
Yeah, thanks, Matt. So for anyone who doesn't know me, my name's Matthew Surridge. I'm the Sales Director at MPowered Mortgages, and looking at the opportunity with foreign nationals sits very much in my sort of day-to-day job. So I work with some very clever colleagues, and when we look at the proposition in the market, size of opportunity is certainly one of the factors, as well as trying to help underserved parts of the market as well. So we do quite a lot of research. We look at the data, try and substantiate that size of the market. So the first thing we do from a very high level is just look at what could the opportunity be. And when you start looking into the data, and a really useful source of data for me is actually Oxford University. So when you look at the data that they analyse, they saw that at the back end of 2022, there was about 6.2 million people work in the UK that were foreign born, which is a huge amount. And then on top of that, if we look at the increase in visa applications that were granted in 2023, that's gone up by around 35%. So I'd actually safely assume that actually that 6.2 million's even bigger. So personally, I think there's a lot of opportunity in respect of the number of people out there working in the UK who probably want to start looking at settling in the UK, looking at their living arrangements. In the UK, we've got a real culture around home ownership as well, rather than renting. So I think there'll probably be a lot of people looking to take advantage of the opportunity to actually own a property in the UK. And I'm sure, Maira and Ken, you see that with customers knocking on your doors wanting to talk to you.
Yeah, you do. Certainly, Matt. Yeah, there's a lot of people that have come to the country who, once they decided that they want to be here, because a lot of them come as exploratory, they don't really know what it's going to be like. They've seen it on TV, but don't really understand the culture until they get here. And you do find a lot of them do want to all of a sudden get out of the rent. I mean, listen, renting's not cheap. We all know this. And if a large percentage of your income is going on rent and you see the home ownership going on around you, I think the desire and the want to actually own something rather than rent something is quite high. And then comes the reality, well, can we actually buy it? Can we actually get onto the system? Do we have what it takes to be able to get onto the property ladder in the UK? Have we been here long enough? Have we built up enough credit profile? What are they going to assess? And they don't know the process because obviously they've not been through it here. So I think there's definitely a desire.
Yes, no, I totally agree with you, Ken. And also, the longer they live here, they take the decision that I want to settle here. And that moment when they decide to settle in the UK, it's where they ensure that, they want to invest, they want to buy a property, they want to buy their home. And as you mentioned, Matthew, there is a lot of increase on working visas as well. So there was a big jump in 2023. And not only that, there is a big jump on extension. So people that already had applied for visa on the previous years and now they're extending. So it shows that they do want to settle here in the UK.
It's amazing, really, when you look at the climate. I mean, it's chucking it down right now. Why would you want to stay? But people seem to want to, don't they? Whether it's just the economy, you know, the country itself, and what we offer as a country to work and things. But certainly not the weather, not today.
No,
I agree with you. It's not the weather, but we've got such a diverse culture in the UK, and I actually personally love that about the UK. Yeah, I think we're quite a welcoming country and community to be a part of, and there's always opportunity here as well, especially for the right people. We'll encourage applications where people can actually support, especially the public services that we have. So I think there's a lot of opportunity for people here.
Look, but that's okay. I totally agree with you with what you say there. But look, let's sort of row back a little bit. I mean, we voted as a country, better or worse, for Brexit, and we've seen also some non-dom rules changing. So if you're a foreign national living here in the UK, you might think, well, you know, is it somewhere that I can sit on an equal playing field, a level playing field, you know, with other people who are applying for mortgages? Are there differences? Are there challenges? Can the group kind of explore that a little bit?
Yeah, I mean, there's definitely differences. I mean, it's like having your bread toasted or not toasted. You know, it's bread, but it's different. You know, never used that one before. I might have to retract that one and think about it again. but I think you get where I'm coming from. You know, it's the process itself. You're trying to get a mortgage. There's a process. But if you are a foreign national in the UK, there is definitely more things that you have to consider. How long have you been here? How long's left on the visa? What type of visa? And I know, Maira, you deal with a lot of Europeans that have come here, so you'll be able to expand on that. But if you are British born, or you are here on indefinite leave to remain, or a British citizen, you've got your British passport, or you're indefinite leave to remain, it is definitely a much simpler process for you than it would be for someone who has come here over the last couple of years and is still on a visa. Wouldn't you say, Maira?
Yes. So when you're looking for mortgage for foreign nationals, there are some other bits of criteria that you need to consider, like how long they've been here for, how long left they have on their visa, you know, like and try to fit that in all the criteria for the right lender as well. With the Europeans, the ones that has got settlement, they have got no issues. They're treated the same way as a British citizen. But the Europeans with pre-settle, for example, there is more restrictions for them. It's not all lenders that will accept their visa. Yeah,
and actually a good point on that as well is this move to biometrics. There's a lot of people who will, when a broker will ask for documentation, they'll ask for sight of the visas, front and back and all the rest of it. And when you're getting it, you might see the date on there is going to end, say, in 24, but actually their biometric information is extending beyond that. But because as brokers, it's not our day-to-day business, it's having the knowledge to say, actually, could you, have you got your biometrics? Can we have access to that? And making sure that you're not misinforming the customer just because of what you see in front of you is probably telling you one story, but your knowledge is curtailing your information. So I think you have to try and keep on top of all this information. There are so many different visas, isn't there? Spousal visas, dependent visas, tier 1, tier 2s. It's a bit of a minefield.
And Matthew, if I can bring you in, I mean, look, you've launched a product, 90% LTV product, and that's been part of the kind of the changes in the last, I don't know how many months, but you're now able to give a slightly more attractive opportunity to borrowers and the brokers who they go to.
Max, I love this. Just talking about MPowered is definitely my wheelhouse. We'll just have this for the rest of the 40 odd minutes. But before we jump into that, then let's start categorizing some of what we just discussed. So you're quite right. We don't have the freedom of movement anymore post Brexit, unfortunately. So the playing field changed slightly at that point. So you've got the people who were living in the UK prior to that. So they would then apply for pre-settled status. Once they've been in the UK for 5 years, they can then apply to have settled status. and then 12 months after that, they can apply to be a British citizen. So there's a route, there's a pathway into British citizenship at that point. Anybody after that, they're now going along the points-based system. So that's going to be the skilled visa. So Ken, you talked about the tier 1, tier 2. They still exist in the current climate, but that was the older version of the sort of new skilled visas that are out there. And there's some other things like British National Overseas. There's quite a few different pathways into being in the UK, living and working in the UK. So when we looked at it with MPowered, I felt we actually had a pretty strong proposition last year, but we want to try and enhance that because, again, size of the market, giving people the opportunity to live and work and enjoy being in the UK. We want to expand on that proposition. So certain things that we looked at were restrictive for customers. Firstly was the size of the deposit. So a lot of lenders are still looking for at least 25%. A lot of lenders max LTV will be set at 75. Yeah. So that could be quite restrictive for people. So we've gone up to our current max LTV, which is 90%. Again, it's not easy finding larger deposits, but hopefully 10% is more achievable than say 25%. We didn't really want to isolate pre-settled, settled status. So again, if someone has pre-settled status, settled status, they're on one of the tier 1, tier 2 visas, they're on a skilled visa, we're absolutely happy with that. In fact, we don't even have a minimum amount of time required left on the visa. Maira, you mentioned that earlier, that some lenders are looking for at least a certain amount of time left. One of the big factors for us when we're looking at it, and probably something we'll approach a little bit later on, is how long they've been in the UK for. So if someone's looking at a 90% mortgage, we like them to have been in the UK for 2 years. Again, essentially that just helps in respect of passing credit score. But we will support people who have been in the UK less than 2 years, but we fall into that 75% LTV bracket at that point. And again, a lot of that is going to be driven around having sufficient credit history and credit scoring for us to be able to assess them sufficiently. If that makes sense. But I think we're in a really strong place. Now, we're not the only lender in this market. We've got some other big names that I think certainly support foreign nationals. Halifax have a strong proposition. Skipton as well have a good proposition. And Maira, you probably use more lenders than just the ones I've named, I imagine.
Yes, I use them all. Yes, Barclays is another name as well that's really good with foreign nationals. Yes.
Yeah, and I was looking at HSBC earlier, and they've got a policy again, but it's like anything, isn't it? You've got to having a policy and being able to get through the policy with a client is different. But the 90% does make you stand out. And again, not just chatting for MPowered, because if you are the only lender that's doing 90%, you are the only lender. It's a bit like the Skipton 100% mortgage we were talking about earlier. They are the only ones in the space at the moment for the track record mortgage. And I'll be honest, I thought a lot more people would jump on that bandwagon than they have. But I think, again, it's about having the appetite for it. You've currently got the appetite for 90%. You've looked at the risk. You've decided that that's a profile that you're happy with. But I think one of the stumbling blocks for a lot of clients is that time in the country and the ability to build up that amount of credit profile. I've got a customer at the moment. He came from Pakistan, him and his wife. They're teachers in good jobs, good income, but they just only been here for 12 months, less than 12 months. But again, going back to the desire, they don't want to be in rented. They're in North London. In fact, they're around the corner from me. It's not cheap here. They want to buy, but they're being held back a little bit. But having propositions that are opening up from lenders such as yourself, hopefully that will open up the door to more lenders thinking there's definitely a business here that we need to be tapping into.
Yeah. I totally agree with that, Ken. Oh, sorry. Having more products with without restrictions on loan to value, or making them able to buy a mortgage, to get a mortgage with like a 10%, for example. Some of them, and good majority of them, they owe a property back home. They also have to pay stamp duty, which is another expense on top of the deposit. But yeah, no, it's great. It's great having those products available for them.
So we've had on that time in the country, we've had a question in from Brian Botherton, who says, well, what about people who've come to Ukraine, come to the UK from Ukraine on Homes for Ukrainians? Clearly, they have an 18-month visa if they wish to settle, if they wish to buy. What are the chances? I mean, it seems like from what you're saying, the answer is regrettably not high.
From my experience, sorry, I know, Matt, that you may have one, and also Maira, I've not had any Ukrainian visas put forward to me yet. And I suppose a lot of brokers react very much rather than are proactive, because I think it's a case of if somebody comes to you and their situation is this, exactly as you've just described from Brian, then we would then try and reach out and say, is there an exception due to the Ukrainian nationality, due to the situation? Is there any sort of bending of or thinking out of the box from lenders for that situation? I've not had a case to put forward to ask the question. Really good question, though.
Yeah, just a bit of intel as well from Ed Batty saying Accord do 95%, Barclays and Skipton do 90s. So there is clearly a groundswell of opportunity for borrowers with some of those other lenders that you mentioned, and that Maira and Matthew mentioned too. One question I wanted to ask you, is this exclusively homeowners, or are you seeing applications and cases coming forward from people who want to do buy-to-let?
Majority of my clients are residential. They're homeowners or they move in homes. The ones that I know, that investors, they have been in the UK a little bit longer, so therefore they have got settlement.
Okay.
So once they're a little bit more comfortable with the market, with the life here, and they decide they want to invest, they have passed the visa transition and they already have settlement here in the UK.
Yeah, that's a good point. I think with me, with buy-to-lets, it typically is people that are originally UK residents but become expats, but have property in the UK that they are still renting out, and they're expats now, but now they want to still have the best deal that they can from the market. So it's about trying to find that. You do get the occasional person who is living abroad. You might get an inquiry from an accountant, so I've got a client that's living in Dubai, China, wherever it may be. Is there a potential for them to invest in the UK? In my experience, it's not something I've been able to help with. When you ring round, it always seems such a minefield and difficult that they end up going to a specialist, maybe that's been dealing with it, that maybe is living in that country, that specializes with helping them buy in the UK. I don't know if Mr. Surridge has got any experiences from an MPowered or from previous experiences.
Yeah, okay. Well, we're primarily in the prime residential space, so it's not something that we do see in regards to people investing, because we're not offering products in that particular space. But I did want to, if you don't mind, just circle back to some of the points that we're talking about a little bit earlier around time in the UK and people that don't have visas that or visas that expire within a short period of time. And I think this is one point where people are seeing brokers and they come and see brokers for advice. And that primarily that is the service that I think adds the most value when people are seeing advisors. And I think this is where they should be having detailed conversations, not only about options to get them what they want, but the risks involved in that as well. Because if I don't necessarily have guaranteed longevity in the UK, and I start putting a lot of my assets into a property, and then suddenly I can't remain living in the UK, I've committed a lot of money and commitment. Is it the right thing for me? And again, it comes down to being a little bit responsible with the advice that you give for people who maybe not been in the country a huge amount of time. Now, we have a property market that can be sometimes quite turbulent. We've gone through pricing that has also been quite turbulent. And I think it's probably sensible for people, before they make such a big financial commitment, probably to understand where they want to live in the UK, understand like the economics in the UK and the factors involved. So I actually think being here for at least a small amount of time, so you can make sensible, informed decisions based on experience and getting sound advice, probably is paramount. But I know I was circling back. I just wanted to make that particular point.
Sure.
Yeah, now you're totally right, Matthew. Like, they coming into the UK, they come into a new country, you know, they're not used to the culture here. Being here 2 years, it might not be clear to you that it's where you want to live forever, or if you want to live, you know, for a good number of years. One of the responsibilities that we have, and I talk a lot to my clients, is what's your plans? How long you want to stay here for? You know, how stable are you with your job? Because you're making a commitment. What happens if your visa doesn't get renewed? What happens if there is an issue back home, you have to go back? So those things we do take lots of time to talk about.
Yeah.
To make sure they take like an informed decisions to buy a property, to settle here.
I think you do find that people who have traveled from another country to this country are more transient. They've already had the upheaval of moving to a brand new country. Sometimes it's even a brand new language. You tend to find that those people are then not so afraid to maybe try a different country, maybe Canada, America, Singapore, Dubai, and they may not stay here long term. I've got clients that have moved to Dubai. I've got clients that have moved to New York. They've kept their properties in the UK. They're renting them out, but they were originally from somewhere else. You know, my New York client originally came from Australia, came to the UK, stayed here for a good 15 years, but then had an opportunity in New York, didn't want to miss it, and now has been in New York long enough to be a US citizen. You know, they tend not to be afraid. So you're quite right, Matt. Knowing the long-term proposition of, is this going to be something that you're going to hold on to, or are you going to have to sell it? Will there be fees? Are you going to lose money because of the market being so volatile? It's something that they do need to consider.
Yeah, just helping people make informed decisions, isn't it?
Yeah.
We're seeing some good intel coming in on the chat. So if you can see the chat, then do have a look at that as well. Some good points being made. And actually, someone's picked up on the issue around non-UK residents and trying to access deals as a non-UK resident. You picked up on it a little bit earlier, Ken, but does Maira, Matthew, you know, what do you think? I mean, is there potential for a market there, or is it more difficult? And ultimately your focus is on the market that you serve, in which is UK residents, or indeed foreign nationals who are resident in the UK.
Yeah, I think what it comes down to, Matt, is what I love about financial services in the UK is the wide variety of choice and innovation that comes through from lenders in this particular market. Every lender, I think Ken, you referenced it earlier, has a different appetite to the lending that they want to do. But you find more and more startups and new brands that are coming out that are focused on really underserved parts of the market. And I think there's, you know, we've talked about the size of the market. I think there's definitely some opportunities for people to actually start growing into these particular areas.
Yeah, no, I'd agree. When we were talking a bit off air, I was saying about when I came into the market and I set up Contracts Mortgage Services back in 2016. For me, I'd come from a contracting community mortgage brokerage before that, and I wanted to serve the mortgage community that were contractors because it was a niche area, made me stand out, made me a little bit different. Self-employed market was unique. Not every broker understands it in its entirety, and I decided to specialize there. And then, like a lot of things in life, something comes and knocks the wind out your sail, and IR35 came in, and about taxation and all the rest of it, and umbrella companies came in, and the whole platform changed for me. And I've diversified now. I mean, I've got this saying, which is if you've got a pulse and provable income, I'm your guy. I will help everybody that will come to me, no matter what their background, what their working standard is, or where they're from. But you do see opportunities arise from time to time, and this is one of them, whereby there is a large amount of people that have come to the country who need assistance. And if you were a broker coming into the market and you were looking for a specific niche that made you stand out differently, this could be a very unique proposition to be able to put forward. I know, Maira, you specialize with Europeans that have come into the country in your thing, and you being someone that's come from another country, you can fully appreciate not only the grasp of a different language, a different community, a different country, but you're a real godsend to those people because you understand what they've been through, you know, much more than anybody else. So you can understand where niches can arise.
Yeah, exactly that, Ken. you know, being foreigner myself, been living here in the UK, be able to speak to them in a different language, to their mother language. I speak Portuguese and I also speak Spanish. So it gives them a little bit more confidence and comfort to go through the process. Majority of my clientele is Europeans or the ones with the working visas, the tier 2, and being in focus on that niche, I have confidence and I have the knowledge to help them out. So yeah, no, that's great.
Mm.
I want to reverse it a small amount. There's a cultural and also regulatory and also just how the market operates difference when you come to the UK. And Maira, Ken, and Matthew as well. When people come to you, do you have to kind of explain to them how the mortgage market works here in the UK? Because look, I've got a small loan on a property in France, small LTV, but my goodness, the difference of operating in France versus operating here was colossal and painful, I have to say. Do you find that you still have to sort of run people through, well, you know, it's probably going to be only fixed for a couple of years, not for 20 years or the period of your mortgage. It is going to be all these various things. You know, it's a cultural, as I say, but also operational difference. How much of that do you have to do?
Yeah, I mean, for me, it's big. Go on, Maira, I think you're going to say.
Yeah, no, it's just like explaining the mortgage to a first-time buyer.
Yeah.
So, you know, like it's totally different the way they do mortgage here to the way they do mortgage in Brazil, for example. In Brazil, you fix a rate and that's the rate for life. Where here it's different. You can fix for a period of time. So yes, it's totally different. And it's just like treating them as like a first-time buyer. Although some of them have properties back home and have had mortgages before.
Yeah, I deal with a lot of Indian nationals. Just seems to be the majority of my clients are Indian or Pakistan. Although I do get a large plethora of Nigerians, I don't know, and South Africans. So I do have a large Indian community. And when you're speaking to them, exactly as Maira said, you have to treat them, regardless of what they own abroad, you have to treat them as if they know nothing and explain it. And there will be some questions like, oh, well, why do they need this? I didn't need this back in the... It's like, well, forget what you needed back home. You've got to address what they need here. And why are they asking me for all these bank statements? What are they looking for? And the fear of, you know, they're looking for something. Are they investigating me? No, it's just a standard process. You really have to cover, you know, really protect them and sort of give them confidence that everything's okay. If something's taken a little bit longer than they think it should, they start to panic. And it's, you know, they fear, is it because I'm a foreign national? Is it because I'm new to the country? So there is a lot of that hand holding, but I totally get what you say, Maira, about long-term fixes. I'm currently doing a Portuguese mortgage with a Portuguese bank, and everything over there is sossegado, which is like relaxed, slow. The pace is so different. So I'm going from a fast pace here that I'm used to a very slow pace, and it's like crazy. It's like, you know, so my appreciation of different systems is also being tested.
Yeah.
And also we talked a bit about, you know, what's changing and what's good, and the LTV was one of them. But also I think we should talk a bit about what the blocks might be. And again, you know, before we came on air, we were talking about where it may be harder, not because of you as an applicant talking to your broker trying to get a deal, but because of where you just happen to hail from. Okay. So, you know, what are some of the problem areas? What are some of the hurdles that people might have to get through when they talk to their broker about what kind of deal they can get?
Well, as a broker, you're always learning. I think Maira and I will agree. We're always learning as brokers. And I knew about this, but I didn't know it was called the black and grey list. Thanks, Matthew. So there's a black and grey list, and there are certain countries which will be a higher risk profile. Now, the client themselves may, and we said this, didn't we? The client themselves specifically may not be high risk. They may be very low risk, very stable, and a good client to be doing business with. But because they come from a particular country that has a high risk profile, the lender's appetite to lend to that individual from that country is going to be low and non-existent in some cases. But this list is always revolving. And as Matthew pointed out to me earlier, it's not a lender-specific list. It's something that lenders adhere to because of the risk profile. And like anything in life, you know, lenders have an appetite for a certain level of risk, this whether it's loan to value and deposits, where deposits come from. You know, deposits have to be from the client in many cases. You can't be having gifts or money from outside of the country. You know, they want it to, unless it's specifically yours, you can prove it. So there are much more restrictions like that on clients. And as I say, that list is ever changing. One moment your country could be on the list, and next minute it might be off. And who's going to tell you that you're on or off? It's difficult. And I think that's where brokers can really add value to a client's experience to try and guide them through that.
Yeah, exactly what Ken said, you know, and there is a lot more diligence for us as a broker to deal with this clientele that come from these high-risk countries. There is a lot more documents that we need to check, and also make sure, you know, it fits the criteria of each lender we recommend a mortgage.
And Matthew, are you? Is that something which is almost? I mean, we talked about one of your abilities to look at people from the first keystroke. I mean, is that something that when you initiate a case that you start to see, well, you know, there could be some hurdles to the application from this client, from this broker, because of those reasons?
Yeah, absolutely, Matt. So just to add a bit more detail to what Ken was referring to. So you've got the Financial Action Task Force. So it's an international watchdog, and what they do is they look at countries that may not have sufficient safeguards in place that help prevent things like anti-money laundering or terrorist financing. So, you know, we're diligent as to who's showing on that list because it poses a risk. You know, we don't want to be supporting these types of organizations as well. And coming back to your point, Matt, when it's the keystroke. So one of the great things with, one of the fantastic things with MPowered, I should say, is the technology. So we've built our platform from the ground up. Well, I say we. I'm using we like I had any part of this. I can barely switch a computer on. So we have very intelligent people that built this journey. And from every keystroke, it's underwriting from the moment that you start entering data in. So, for example, once we've established who the person is by their name, their address, their date of birth, we're already running a soft search because we want to be able to tell people actually if it's a yes or no within the first 35 seconds, not after you spent 10 minutes filling out data for a lender that's ultimately going to say no. So we try to get to decisions very quickly, but some of these things will be factors that we're looking for in the background. But it'll also assess the additional documentation that we might need. So if you're uploading bank statements and we're seeing large transactions or transactions that might be coming from abroad, the system will then just prompt you and say, oh, by the way, we might need to ask you a question on this. We need to understand what that is. And that's no different from any other lender. All that we do differently is we try and automate as much of the process as possible to get the information that we need to assess things faster and reduce the amount of data that you have to key in. But yeah, these are all factors when assessing applications, and that's across the board for all lenders. We just try and do it quickly.
Yeah.
Oh, your system is brilliant. It's so efficient and quick.
Don't be telling him that, Maira. Dan, I can hardly see him on the screen. His head is getting so big.
I must say, the other day I got an awful wee thing like a day and a half, so I can't complain.
No,
it was really good.
Yeah, thanks, Maira. I mean, ultimately, the goal is starting getting instant offers out. But the difference in the approach that MPowered take, it isn't a risk approach as in, well, actually, we're just not going to look at this bit from a risk basis. It's a low LTV or whatever that might be. Cases are still being fully assessed, but it's being automated. So it's still being checked. And what that's going to allow us to do is start scaling up. So it's not whether a case is being fully automated or not. A lot of the cases that we do, actually 90% if it's been automated, we only need the underwriter to spend 20 minutes checking one or two things. But some of these factors will be some of them, like, you know, we ask as part of the question set in the system, if we identify very quickly in the journey that it's somebody that is on a visa, as part of our policy, we just need to know they intend to stay living in the UK for all the reasons we discussed earlier. So it's smart enough to know, oh, actually, I need to ask this question. But if you're not from outside the UK, it just wouldn't be a box to check. Ultimately.
Yeah, you know, taking a step back a second, everything you said is valid, and it's great that MPowered's process is that way. I was just thinking back to the opportunities we were talking about earlier. Matt, in regards to things that we could do as brokers to try and enhance our proposition to people that are coming to this country. And we've got Maira here. She can speak Spanish. She can speak Portuguese. Although it'd be Brazilian Portuguese, not European Portuguese. Or do you speak European Portuguese as well?
Yeah, there is a little difference between them two.
A little bit, but I've got a friend of mine who set up her own business similar time to me. She's Hungarian. She will get staff in who speak different languages, which I think is an amazing asset to a business. And I think as we grow our brokerages, having people in your company who can speak more than one language, that can allow foreign nationals who have come to the country to converse more freely without the barrier of language. And also thinking about, sometimes documents have to be transcribed or translated. And if there is a credit report that is required from abroad, how do you understand that? Having official channels that you can use to change and translate. But I think there's a great opportunity for brokerages who maybe are like mine. I'm a one-man band. I only speak English, sadly, although I'm trying to speak Portuguese. To have people in their business who can offer services to foreign nationals coming in to make their journey much simpler.
Yeah, there's a comment actually that's come in as well on the chat about that. Sometimes we have to rely on Google Translate. Is it good enough? Do we have?
Can you imagine?
Yeah. Well, look, I can speak okay French in a restaurant. When it comes to a mortgage deal, that's a different matter entirely, and you really have to get some expert opinion on that and expert input. So that's kind of, as you say, the specializing role of brokers who choose to look at those parts of the market. And I wanted to ask you both also, look, what would you like to see different? What would you like to see opening this market up even further? What would you like to see as the sort of changes that might come down the track? Anything at all which you would think, well, that would make my life easier?
Do you want to go, Maira?
Well, I think it's like if we have more lenders coming to the market, we'll give more options to the clients. Like considering they're here on a visa, like going back to the time that they've been living in the UK and the time they need left on a visa at the moment of the application. And Matthew, you might add something into that. So sometimes, like a client's been here for 3 years or 4 years, and the visa was originally for 5 years, and he's like that year ahead to renew. But because it's less than 1 year, it makes more difficult for them to get a mortgage. So I think if the lenders start to come to be a little bit more flexible, and understand case by case as well, that'll be great. So you enable those clients to apply a little bit earlier than having to wait to go through to renew the visa and get settlements to be able to.
Yeah. I mean, Maira, I'm going to take that as an absolute opportunity for a shameless plug. And I'm not even going to apologise. I'm going to apologise. But that was one of the things I was really pleased about looking at our policy, where we don't dictate a minimum amount of time left on the visa. I mean, essentially, the customers is a large risk themselves if their visa doesn't get renewed. There's that huge commitment that they're looking at. We'll have security in the property with deposit. I mean, that's not a justification to do something as in like we're okay and they're not. But it's just understanding that people probably wouldn't go through that process if they thought they were having to jump on a plane next week. Yeah. I know not all lenders will do that. I mean, everyone has a different appetite. We've discussed this already, but it was just something I was particularly pleased on supporting.
Yeah, for me, I think, sorry, Matt, I think for me, it's going back to that deposit side of things. It's great knowing that clients have to produce their own fund, but why is there a restriction on gifts if it's from close family members? Maybe if they're in the UK, that should be more permissible, because people that come to the country sometimes have already a network of family here that have come before them. Maybe a little bit more flexibility within where deposits come from, and access to allow clients to build that deposit from more than just their own funds would be a really good thing for me. And one theme that's being played out in the chat as well is multiples of income, and whether that's a differential point that's being treated differently for foreign nationals versus people who are are UK nationals. Is that an issue? Are we seeing a differential in treatment of cases that come forward on terms of multiples, or is it just harder for foreign nationals to
to get those multiples?
I'll just cover my part off really quickly here.
Yeah.
We don't treat any application differently in respect of where their kind of origins from, whether they're on a visa or not. So for us, it's does the customer pass our policy around the visa? If they do, everything else we do is the same as how it applies to everybody else, be it the credit score at that LTV or the income multiple that they achieve on affordability. So we're not going to put any different parameters in place. I don't know if Maira and Ken, you come across lenders that do that differently?
No, from experience, like it's the same.
Yeah, I
For
think it's just
income,
that.
all treated the same.
Yeah, I think it's just a misconception. It's a bit like self-employed people will say, because I'm self-employed, will they treat me differently? Well, they will underwrite your income differently to an employed person, but the physical underwriting of the rest of the case is the same as everybody else. The rates you will achieve are the same as everybody else. And that's true of this, I believe.
Okay, interesting. Look, let's cast forward, I don't know, let's say 3 years, just for the sake of argument. Is it going to be easier and better for foreign nationals to secure mortgage deals in the UK through brokers like you, Maira, and you, Ken? Is it going to be a better playing field for them, more level, we hope, with UK nationals? Or do we think the political winds, the way things are blowing, might include some changes to how they might access financial products like a mortgage?
Do you want to go first, Maira?
Well, I really hope so. I really hope that it's going to be, there'll be more opportunities. There'll be more people come to the UK, and they'll be able to apply for mortgage here. So yeah, I'm hopeful on that one. Yeah.
Do you know what? It's such a difficult question, in all honesty, Matt, because we don't know. We feel that maybe the government may change. I mean, it's not a certainty, but they may change. And the whole talk through the budget is trying to make the UK a place, a destination for people to come to, which is going to be tax efficient, exciting for them to come and maybe explore work opportunities in the country, which means that I think it's only going to increase the amount of people that may see the UK as a home. And if that's the case, then obviously we're going to see a lot more people here that are going to need our services. I think that's fair to say, Maira. I think also as lenders progress and they do diverse and criteria, I mean, lenders are becoming a lot more innovative because of people like MPowered, because of Perenna, all these different lenders that are coming in offering something slightly different. I think is starting to really stir the pot for lenders and make them think, you know what, we can't just be a one-trick pony. We have to be something different, and we have to keep up with the rest of the guys. Otherwise, we're going to start losing business. So I think with natural evolvement of mortgages and their development to their need to bring clients in, I'd like to think it will become a little bit easier. I've been wrong before. I could be wrong again.
That seems like a reasonably natural place to wrap up. Unless anyone has any final comments they want to add.
No.
Everyone okay? Good. Can I thank Maira Oliveira from Mortgage Mum? Can I thank Ken James from Contractor Mortgage Services and Matthew Surridge from MPowered? There's just one or two more things to say. First of all, our sponsors have been Newspage, the Intermediary, and MPowered. And I've got one last piece of business, and I have to read it, I'm afraid, because it's like a radio DJ. But we've got Broker of the Week is a new feature for Mortgage News Channel. We've got Simon Ward of Lincoln Mortgage and Protection, who's this week's Star Broker of the Week, and he's being recognised for his exceptional expertise and unwavering support. His kind and patient approach helps his clients secure their last two mortgages amid complexities including rising rates, challenging solicitors, you all know those, and health difficulties. So he's gone above and beyond, securing remarkable deals on mortgages, life insurance, and income protection. Well done for your outstanding service, Simon. If you're on and listening, then
well done, Simon. Yeah.
If you're not, then your friends will tell you about it, and you should have been on and listening. That wraps it up for us for this week. Thanks everybody for joining. Thanks for your comments. Some good information there in the chat. Thank you again to the panelists.
Thank you.
And I hope you enjoy the rest of the week.
Thank you, Matt.
Yep. Cheers, guys.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.